And we're going to be continuing on this evening in the making the connection with Yahweh. We are continuing on in chapter 20. This will be the third lesson today. And we're going to be picking up about page 164. And the title of the sermon is The Finishing Work of the Seventh Messenger, number 5. That's it, 6 months left, clean up or burn. And this actually came from the Feast of Tabernacles, 10th Roman month of 2003. And it's really interesting. It's interesting to note that how these things were brought so long ago, so many years ago, but yet the titles and the very things that we're covering fit perfectly with where we are in prophecy and where we are in history today. It just never ceases to amaze me. But the main topic of the sermon here is, in the days of the seventh Moloch will be the finishing of Yahweh's 6,000-year plan, the 6,000-year plan that's been given to mankind, for mankind to go their own way and to do the things that they want to do, basically without Yahweh, without following Yahweh's laws, and so that they can be actually taught a valuable lesson. And that not only mankind can be taught the valuable lesson, but also the beings that are actually observing and watching these things take place. And that they're also going to learn and see what the following of sin, or the continual breaking of the law, iniquity, what the falling of iniquity, what it actually produces. And then at the end of this 6,000-year plan, we also see here about the resurrection also. And we're going to cover a little bit more about that this evening. Again, as we prepare for the feast, we know we just koshered the sanctuary yesterday, getting the leavening out of the sanctuary, and I hope as we do go through this koshering process that we are following what's written here in Philippians 2:5, which is to have the same mind, the same thought processes, and they have the same ideas and the same attitude going through our minds as Yeshua did. And so, like I said, we're right at a week away we're a week away from the Seder, and a little less than a week from Yeshua's memorial. So it's just something to keep in mind, men, as we continue in our preparations for this great Feast of Unleavened Bread. And I have no doubt that this is going to be the greatest Feast of Unleavened Bread ever. So, praise Yahweh for that. And then we see here that we're given a warning. Yeshua gave a warning and said that to be on guard, so that no man deceives you. For there's many going to come against his name. Many will come against my name, saying that I am anointed to preach salvation, and will deceive the many. And then we're going to see that there will be false messiahs and false prophets who are going to show great signs and wonders. And if it were even possible, that they would actually deceive the very elect. And that is a warning that's been throughout the scriptures. This deception has been brought forth by the Queen of Heaven from the beginning. And we're going to see a little bit more about that. But the Queen of Heaven is actually the one that's behind all this deception, behind these false teachings, and actually behind the wars that are prophesied in Revelation. That's part of what we covered last week. And then we also, saw a lot of how the laws and the prophecies are actually a pattern. They're a pattern to the kingdom of heaven. The laws and the prophecies, the laws that we are striving to follow, the laws that we are learning how to follow, how to apply. Those are the very laws that are going to be governing in the kingdom of Yahweh. And it's those laws that are going to bring peace, joy, and abundant living. The things that violate the law, or the things that are taught by the Queen of Heaven, actually go against, they go against those laws, and they actually bring forth the sickness and disease, and ultimately, the coronavirus, and ultimately resulting in the last 7 plagues that were in the beginning stages of at this time. And then we also saw here how Yahweh is zealous for his children, and he doesn't want any of his children to follow after the gods, because well, Satan has it flipped and turned around as well. Yahweh doesn't want you to enjoy life. No, Yahweh wants us to enjoy life to the fullest, but he knows that if we follow after the ways of God's, it brings nothing but harm. Okay? But Satan has managed to deceive the entire world into thinking otherwise. And we have to remember that Satan is very subtle. She's very crafty. And part of the things that Pastor was going through as we were covering last week toward the end of class, he was going through the Ten Commandments. He was going through the Ten Commandments here about not turning. He said, do not turn to these hinder gods. And it's, how they make a statement, well, the Catholic Church will say, well, this is like an idol. We're not to bow down to this idol. And Christianity actually wants you to think that this is what it is. But it's actually following after the pattern of God worship. It's following after that life, the life of the gods, which is a continual breaking. It's living in iniquity. It's the pursuing of following after what's right in your own heart, trusting in your own heart, ignoring the laws of Yahweh, ignoring the instruction that comes from the Holy Scriptures. Okay? And so, let me see here where we left off. We left off here on page 164. So let's start here, and we'll start here in verse, let's see here. We're going to start here in verse 78 here. Okay, we'll start here in verse 78. And it says, now here is the second commandment. And right off the bat, man, get your highlighters out because we're going to highlight this next part. He says, you shall not make for yourself any carved image. And Pastor asked the question, he says, did you know that the Catholic Church took this one out? They actually took this commandment about not making for yourself any carved image. They took it out of their 10 commandments. It's not there. It is not there. If you think I'm pulling your leg, get yourself a Catholic Bible and look at it. They took one out completely and said, well, we don't want that sucker in here, but we have images everywhere, but you're not supposed to have that either. And I remember Pastor showing, he says, they took the 10 commandments, they took that commandment out. And they said, oh no, we got to come up with another one. We got to fill in that gap because now there's only 9. So they took the last one and they split it up into 2. So if you take a look at the overhead here, you see the 10 Commandments, the 10 Commandment comparison. This is actually in Exodus chapter 20, verses 3 through 17 is where you find the 10 Commandments. And on the left side of the screen over here, what comes out of the King James Version is what was used, and you can see, it's kind of hard to see it there. Let me see if I can kind of help out there a little bit. You can see there that the 10 Commandments, you shall have no gods before me, you shall not make yourself an idol, you shall not take the name of, it says, the Lord in vain. Remember the Sabbath day. They actually left that word in there, Sabbath. We're going to see the change here in just a second. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. And then the last one, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, his manservant, his maidservant, nor his ox, donkey, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor. Okay? Look at what the Catholic Church did over here. It says, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no strange gods before me. Look at number 2. You shall not take the name of the Lord in vain. Well, see how they took number 2 out? They took that out of there. Then they changed number 3, and they changed the one about the Sabbath. Remember the Lord's Day. You see how they did it. You see by the changes that they did how they're deceiving the world. And then you can kind of see the rest of them there, how the rest of them sort of kind of fall into place. But that last one there, look what they did to what they refer to as 9 and 10. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not covet your neighbor's items. You see that? You see what they did. You see how they split that up. That is part of the deception. That's part of that deception that has gone out. And then he shows here, then Pastor continues back here in verse 79 here. In verse 79, he shows the third one, you shall not bow down to them nor serve them, for I, Yahweh, your Father, am jealous. The word here, jealous, is not like you would think of jealousy between a man and his wife. This word is jealous, yes, But he does not want you going to the gods because he knows of the harm. He knows the harm that it will bring. And this is why he doesn't want us going that way. And Pastor writes here, he says, this is a righteous jealousy. This is a righteous jealousy a husband has for his wife and trying to protect her from doing harm to herself or to someone else or breaking up the family life. Because he knows the harm, and we know the harm that comes from practicing sin, from violating these things. He says, yes, Yahweh is speaking of that righteous jealousy here. It was not in any way an evil jealousy like is painted by generation after generation of preachers. And then he continues, he says, he punishes. Again, this is all part of the words that they use in order to make Yahweh appear to be an evil God. Well, he punishes. Well, no, Yahweh doesn't punish. He judges. Yahweh sets the right way to go. He sets life and death, blessings and curses. The judgments are set. If you follow these laws, these blessings will come. If you violate them, these curses will come. The judgments are set. He knows if we go the way of sin, these things are going to come upon us. And he puts that warning out there. It's not a punishment. There is not a punishment. This is a judgment. This is what is going to take place. And it's up to us to make those right choices. But he judges the children of the lawbreakers of the fathers to the third and the fourth generation. Brethren, it even goes on from there. But he is keeping records of this right here. And we're going to get into a little bit more about this record keeping. He says the word punishment does not mean that. He said it just shows that they are punishing themselves, and records are being kept of it to the third and the fourth generation of these families. These things are passed down. The records are actually being passed down in genetic material and genetic code and genetic mutations, if you want to put it that way. The birth defects, the mental defects and stuff that come upon people, the physical defects that we see passed on. The anxiety, the depression, these different things that we struggle with, even though we might not see them, they are manifest, and they are, we can experience these things. And some of these things are passed down from the sins of our fathers and our forefathers, the third and fourth generation back. But we have to break the cycle. We are going to break the cycle. We're doing what we can not to pass those on to our children. And in doing that, we're protecting not only our children, but their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. You see how by us keeping these righteous laws and teaching these righteous laws and practicing these things actually protects the generations to come. It has to start somewhere. So it's starting with us. It's starting with us in this generation. So we see here, it says, and one of the elders was telling me last night that he's been here 7 years, and he says that's great because your body has completely changed in that 7 years. So Yahweh has had you here long enough for you to change your entire genetic makeup. It takes 7 years for that to take place. It takes 7 years to correct the mistakes or to correct the errors. But it only takes a second to mess it up, and then it takes that much time. It takes so much time to get in there and to get those things resolved and to get them fixed. He says, so Yahweh has had you here long enough so you can change your entire genetic makeup. If you've been practicing these laws fully, which I believe he has, and in fact, I've never seen a stronger devotion from anyone here. And he says in verse 83, but showing love, that is, he shows love to everyone, even to those who are going to perish. But showing love to thousands who love me by keeping my laws. And the true ahab comes from the warning that goes out. Yahweh doesn't force anybody to keep his laws any more than Satan forces anybody to break the law. But the true ahab is preaching that warning, standing up against the ridicule and against everything that comes against the house, everything that comes against us. Yet we stand in our place and we continue to push forth and stand in our part in pushing forth this message. That's true ahab. He says, you shall not take the name of Yahweh your heavenly Father and bring it to nothing. That is saying that you are carrying the name or are going to keep his laws belonging to his house and then going and turning back to sin by going out into the world and living a different life from that which you do here in the house of Yahweh. That is how we can bring the name of Yahweh to nothing. We bring dishonor. It's simply bringing dishonor upon the name. Remember the Sabbath day. A lot of people forget this one, and they've been in the house of Yahweh for a while. They start getting negligent, and they start boiling things on the Sabbath, and they start breaking the Sabbath in many other ways. And then they have to repent of it, and that's what we have repentance, that's what we have repentance and confession for. But we have to be careful. We can't grow complacent. That was the one thing they taught us in the police academy. We cannot be complacent. You can't get comfortable. You can't get complacent. We have to be on guard. The scripture tells us be on guard 24 hours a day because Satan walks about like a roaring lion seeking whom she can devour. So we have to constantly be on guard. We have to constantly check our thoughts against, is this thought lawful? Is what we're planning, is it lawful or is it not? So we have to we have to continue with this patient persistence. We cannot grow weary. If you take a look at the overhead there, look at, a cross-reference if you want to look here is in Galatians 6:9. We're told here, and let us not grow weary of doing righteousness, for in due time we will reap if we do not faint, and if we endure until the end. Now, that word weary can mean exhausted in strength, exhausted in endurance, and it's not just a physical. It's mental. It can be mental. It can be a mental exhaustion. Remember, Daniel showed that Satan, seeks to mentally wear out the saints. But it can be exhausted in strength, endurance, or vigor. That vigor means active bodily or mental strength. It means having one's patience or tolerance or pleasure exhausted. Having our patience exhausted. Having our tolerance just exhausted. The continual, the day-to-day grind, if you want to call it that. But we cannot grow weary in doing righteousness because we've come so far. Men, look how far we've come. Look how far each and every one of you have come from the time that you entered Yahweh's house. It doesn't matter if it's been 6 months, a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years, 30 years, 50 years. It doesn't matter. Look at where we were and look at how far we've come. So we have to continue in that patient persistence. Because time is getting shorter, even though we might not see it. We just might not see it. We might not have a definite date. We might not have a definite time. But we're given the time here, that we're given the time of how long we have to endure. And that's to the end. We have to continue endure until the end. Because our work in the kingdom, it's never going to end. It's going to be an everlasting work. And we're going to have to patiently persist in doing righteousness for all eternity. Okay? So praise Yahweh. Okay? All right, so let's continue on here. Oh, where was I? Okay. Verse 85 over here, it says, 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day, not Sunday now, not like it was in the Catholic Ten Commandments, not the Lord's Day, not the first day, but the seventh day of the week, the Sabbath, the seventh day. If you try to keep any other day of the week there, like the Muslims do, Yahweh just won't be there with you. Yahweh says, I will be at my house at my appointed times, on his Sabbath days and his feast days. But they have to be kept according to Yahweh's way for him to be there. They're his appointments. He's invited us to his appointments. He's going to be there at his appointed time. Are we going to be there? Okay, highlight this next paragraph. Well, at least part of this next paragraph here. It says, as Hebrews 4:10 shows, there still remains the keeping of the Sabbath. This is a sign for Yahweh's people, and this sign is showing that you belong to Yahweh. Highlight that. Highlight that there. His eyes and his heart are there with you on the Sabbath day if you are keeping this law. This brings strength in itself. It also records a history of your past life, which will be very beneficial to show what this day here brings, okay? Some cross-references there. If you want to take a look, if you want to cross-reference Yeketskia 20, verse 12, which shows that I gave my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies them. Yahweh sanctifies us through his Sabbaths. Exodus 31:13 says, speak to the children of Israel, saying, surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for they are a sign. Remember that word sign comes from Hebrew word number 226, which means mark. It's part of the mark of Yahweh. So they are a sign between me and you throughout all your generations, that you know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies you and makes you holy. And then in 1 Kings 9:3, we see here where Yahweh shows that he says, my eyes and my heart will be there perpetually at the required seasons, at Yahweh's ordained weekly Sabbaths and his feast days. And that's a promise from Yahweh, okay? That is a promise from Yahweh that he will be here at his appointed times. Okay, verse 87 here, at bottom left-hand column of page 165. Let's highlight this first part here. It says, the Feast of Tabernacles was over yesterday. What we are celebrating today represents the great white throne judgment, okay? So that was the last great day. What it represents is the great white throne judgment. And that's outlined, if you want to take a look at that, that's described in Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 15, okay? And it's also described in the mark of the beast as well. It was also covered, there was also covered in the prophetic word. There was a prophetic word, the 9th and 10th Roman month 2007, okay? So that's also a reference there. Okay, so we see here that this this represents the great white throne judgment, and Pastor writes here, he says, keeping a record of this will certainly be beneficial to you in that day. You are going to be judged by what you have done and by what you are doing right now. And of course, a cross-reference for that, take a look here in Romans chapter 2, verses 6 through 9. Romans 2, 6 through 9, which we're shown here, it says, when he will reward each one according to his works. To the ones, on the one hand, who by patient persistence in doing righteousness, we just talked about that, by the patient persistence in doing righteousness, seek for glory and honor and immortality, he will give eternal life. But to the ones, on the other hand, who are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, he will give indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man who does evil, to the Yahweh first and also to the Greek. So what's being shown there is that by following after the ways of the world, by being contentious and not obeying the truth, by giving in to unrighteousness, that we bring upon ourselves this indignation, this tribulation, this anguish, and all of the things that we see out in the world. That's what we bring on. That's what we bring to ourselves here. Top of the page here, it says, honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. Get this, brethren, it's very important. This is a sin against your own body, because you're bringing in what Yahweh says is hatred and lust into your own body. And if you remember, the cross-reference that we had for that was 1 Corinthians 6:18. We covered that quite extensively here a couple of lessons ago. But when we covered Reuben's sin, how this is a sin against your own body and how it starts to break the body down. Well, this is what Satan wants to do. She wants to break the body down. She wants to break the mind down. That's how she, in her mind, that's how she thinks she's going to defeat mankind. Okay? But you see here it says this is a sin against your own body. And it says, then you are opening it up to this sinful way, this law-breaking way, and letting it grow. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. This stealing actually includes a man's daughters and sons. Okay, stealing goes much further than taking something from somebody. I mean, you can take somebody's reputation. You can take somebody's time. I mean, there's a lot of different things and the ways that you can steal. There's a lot more in here on this law of stealing and trespassing. You shall not bear false testimony against your brother. You shall not covet. Remember that covet. Another word for covet is lust. That is to lust after anything that belongs to your neighbor or his house. You know, you shall not covet your brother's wife or his manservant, his maidservant. You know, it's none of that. And then Pastor goes here and he says, this is a summary that you all need to keep if you want to be a part of the coming of this great work of Yahweh. And he was talking about the summary of the Ten Commandments there. That is a summary, an outline of the entire 613 body of laws. Okay? Continuing on here in verse 92 here, he says in verse 8, he shows verse 18, then all the people saw the thunder and the lightning. Verse 19, and they said to Moshe, you speak with us. Yahweh appointed him as such. Verse 20, Moshe said to the people, now highlight this. Highlight this. Do not fear, for Yahweh has come to test and to prove you. That is the same thing that is going on right now. Which way are you going to go? So highlight that. Do not fear, for Yahweh has come to test and to prove you. We have to be tested, we have to be proved. That is the same thing that is going on right now. Which way are you going to go? Yahweh needs to know, are we going to be trustworthy, are we not? Can we follow instructions? Can we not? Can we be trusted when there's nobody around? Or can we not? Or when we think that there's nobody around, because Yahweh sees everything. There's nothing that can be hidden. Are you going to rebel like an orphan who has no father or mother? Yahweh has already told you to honor your father and mother. Who is your father and who is your mother? Yeshua said the priests who guide you are your father and your mother, and you are their disciples. Yahweh has come to test and to prove you to see if you're fit for the kingdom. That's why the tests and trials are coming against us, men. To see if we're fit for the kingdom. This work that he had planned from the beginning, that is what he is here for today too. To see if you will keep these 613 laws. Remember, they're the pattern of the kingdom. What we see being practiced here, the laws that are being taught, the laws that are being practiced, the judgments that are being pronounced, are the same judgments that are going to be in the kingdom. So we have to work. We have to be tested and proven to see not only are we going to follow these things, are we going to uphold these things, or are we going to follow? You know, are we going to uphold and agree with these as well? It says the 6,000-year plan is shown in the feasts of Yahweh. The feasts show it. In fact, the first 6,000 years show that everything is temporary. It shows that everything is temporary. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18. So we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. You know, the things that we see in the world, the things that are seen in the world, the things that appear desirable. You know, those things are temporary, just like it shows here in 1 Yahweh chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, where we're told to not love the world. Do not love the world nor the things that are in the world, because they're temporary, they're fleeting. They're there actually to test us. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh. Now look what it is. It's the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. It's not of the Father, but it's of the world. And all of these things, and the world passes away with all the lust that is in it. And all of those things are going to pass away as well. But he who does the will of Yahweh abides forever. So that's where the true treasure is. The true treasure is in learning and studying and practicing these laws and overcoming the foolish pride and the foolishness that is shown out here in the world. Because that stuff is passing away. It can be taken away from us in an instant. But you know what they can't take? They cannot take the things that we've put into our minds. If we've stored up righteousness in our minds, if we've stored up righteousness in our hearts, you know, in our character, they can't take that from us. We can give it away, but they can't come by and take it. They can come by, they can take property, they can take a car, they can take physical possessions. But the one thing they can't take, men, is that character that we've built, or that whatever it is that we build within us. It's the one thing they can't take. And that's what Pastor shows here. So it shows your land, your property, everything you have can be taken away from you by Satan's way in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, when you turn your head or when you go on a long journey, as Proverbs says. As the wife says, oh, my husband is away and is on a long journey. Come and let us play. Part of the enticement of the world. Turn over to Revelation 20. The seventh 1,000-year period is seen right here. And that is coming very, very soon now. You think about it was coming soon then when this sermon was given. Look how much sooner it's coming now. It's close. It's close. It's coming very, very soon now. And I saw Malach come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand, and he laid hold on the dragon, and that serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound her 1,000 years. Now highlight this next part here. It says, and cast her into the bottomless pit. That is, he limited her power even more than it is limited now. Christianity thinks that somebody is going to go up there with a big old chain, wrap a chain around this being, and throw this being into a pit and put a lock on it and say, all right, you're locked up. No, her power is going to be limited. Her workers' powers are going to be limited. And it's going to shut her up and set a seal on her that she should deceive the nations no more. After this great tribulation and beginning the Millennial Reign, that's what's going to take place. For 1,000 years, the deception is not going to be allowed to be on the earth. Satan is not going to be allowed to deceive any longer. For a time. We know right here from this that the nations are deceived. Okay? Nations are deceived. Revelation 12:9, right? Okay? We know that Yahweh has established a work here in the last days to go to these deceived nations. Isaiah 2:2-4, Micaiah 4:1-3. Okay? The witness, he goes forth and rebukes strong nations from afar off. And eventually they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. We know that Yahweh has established a work here in the last days to go to the deceived nations. And we know from this and from 1,000 other scriptures that the nations are deceived. She is going to be sealed up and her power limited. She will deceive the nations no more until this 1,000 years, the seventh 1,000-year period, is finished. And after that, she must be loosed a little season. Okay? Men, the information that you're getting right here about the Millennial Reign, about the Great Tribulation, about the Millennial Reign, about the Great White Throne Judgment, it's been given to you to know. It's the secrets of Yahweh. Christianity knows nothing about it. The world has no understanding about this whatsoever. It has been given to the people of Yahweh to go forth and to understand these things, because this is going to be our job. This is what we're qualifying to do. The Millennial Reign is actually spoken of and talked about in the Mark of the Beast, Volume 2, Chapter 15. And after that, Pastor shows, if you remember in Isaiah, she is loosed 100 years. So highlight that. She is loosed 100 years. Satan is going to be loosed 100 years. Highlight that. Okay, that is when all the dead will be resurrected. People, they have no idea of the resurrection. They have no idea that there are two resurrections. They don't understand what the resurrections are for. But we in Yahweh's house, we know, because those secrets, this great secret has been given to us. And it's an honor and a privilege to be able to have that and to understand that and to see it and to actually to be able to qualify to have a part in that. Praise Yahweh. But she will be loosed 100 years when all of the dead will be resurrected. And they will have all the history to go by. At the end of that 100 years, anyone who is deceived by her or who is led off to La La Land, temporary land again, they will simply die and never be resurrected again. Okay? Okay, I looked up La La Land. I had to look it up. Okay, La La Land. You know, Pastor gave a sermon on that. It's La La Land it's a temporary world, and there was a series that Pastor gave, 5:30 of 92 and 6:8 of 92, called Glitter and Glamour. It's a sermon series where that's described. Okay, but La La Land is also a euphoric, dreamlike state, a dreamlike mental state, detached from the harsher realities of life. Okay, that's what La La Land is. It's a euphoric, dreamlike mental state, detached from the harsher realities of life. People don't want to deal with reality. What do? They escape. They go to La La Land. But it's also used as a nickname for Los Angeles, California. And what's in Los Angeles, California? Hollywood. Okay? So this glitter and glamour, this euphoric, dreamlike mental state perpetuates from La La Land, from Los Angeles. That's where it perpetuates from. That's what people are putting in their that's what they put in their minds. Constant, they can do it 24 hours a day. I know people that would, if they could. But that consumes them. And we know from other readings that the Vatican, they have an office in Hollywood. That the Vatican controls what comes forth from Hollywood. They have an office there that they can, because they have been determined that they can be responsible for determining what's beneficial to go out to the people. They realize how effective of a teaching tool that entertainment is, and they're using it to the fullest. But continuing on here in verse 4, verse 99 here, it says, verse 4, and I saw the thrones, and they sat upon them. This should be you, brethren. You are called for this purpose if you will just endure. Go back to what we saw about not growing weary. You know, we can't grow weary about doing this, about performing righteousness. We have to continue. We have to stand fast. We have to continue in our job. And judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of those who were beheaded for the witness of Yahshua and for the word, that is, for the laws of for Yahweh, for the laws and the prophecies, and who had not worshipped the beast nor the beastly system, nor had been a part of this beastly system, nor the likeness, neither received his mark in their foreheads nor upon their hands. This is the mark of Sunday or democracy. Okay, again, if you want to cross-reference there, Mark of the Beast, Volume 1, I think, chapter 16, I think, covers that. But there's a lot in here from the Mark of the Beast. Okay? And they lived and reigned with the Messiah for 1,000 years, but the rest of the dead did not live again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he who has part, or is given a part in this first resurrection. On such the second death has no power, but they will be, and Pastor shows here, it says they will become priests of Yahweh and the Messiah, and will reign with him 1,000 years. This means not just the priests, but the family, as it is shown in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Okay? Okay? So Leviticus 23 shows the feast days, and the Feast of Tabernacles in the 8th day. The 8th day we just read about in Revelation 20. Let's look at Revelation 20 some more, and you can read Leviticus 23 on your own. Romans 1 says that this is fully displayed here, showing the plan of Yahweh. And then in Revelation 27, and the devil who deceived them, remember how she did this in the first place in Genesis. I will not have time to cover that either. This is something that, Pastor has covered, he's covered quite a bit. That Adam and Eve, Eve was deceived into becoming evil like the gods. He says to get on the tape list, get on the list, get on the sermon list, and I will cover this in detail later. And he's also talking about the 70 weeks of years and how this, and how all that played out or is playing out. But this devil talking about Satan who deceived them. Deception is subtle, remember? Genesis 3, 1 through 5 shows how subtle Satan is. And this is what was being written about here in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3 through 4. And this is a warning. This is a warning for us. And it says, but I fear that by any means, as the serpent subtly deceived Eve with their craftiness, so your minds could be corrupted and led astray from the simplicity that is in the Messiah. There's nothing difficult. There's nothing mysterious. There's nothing hard about following what we're being told to do. There's nothing difficult about following the laws of Yahweh. The difficulty comes from the deception and from the pressure that comes forth from those from the outside coming in. That's where the difficulty lies. For if he who comes preaches another Messiah which we have not preached, or if you accept a different spirit which you have not received, or another message which you have not accepted, you might well put up with him, and you might rather follow him. But the main thing is we've got to be careful and to not be led away from the simplicity that is in Messiah. And it's really interesting in Mark of the Beast, Volume 2, if you remember pages 293 to 294, it talks about the testing of your faith. There's a section in there about the testing of your faith, okay? And it mentions 3 trials. And it says the first trial comes when Satan the adversary tries to make you doubt the faith that Yahweh has shown to you when you were brought to the body of Messiah. The most important thing is not to reject the truth. And this goes right along with the parable of the sower. Okay? And it shows the second trial comes when tribulation or persecution comes because of Yahweh's word. And that comes from employers. It comes from relatives, family, friends. People actually, coming at you. Now, the third trial, now get this now, because the third trial is sometimes the most subtle of tests. Okay? It says, the cares of this life and the deceitfulness of riches. Many times the cares of making a living become stronger than the word of Yahweh that we are commanded to practice. Life's pressure can become very strong, and many times people reason that they have to do certain unlawful things because of the need of money, resulting in the word of Yahweh, because of for example, the need of money, and this can result in the word of Yahweh being choked out. Okay, so the subtleness with the cares of this world, or the deceitfulness of riches, okay, that can get in the way. That can very easily get in the way. And those are some of the things that we really have to be on guard, and look out for. Let me see here. Okay. If we go a little bit further down the page over here, Pastor talks about, he talks about getting multiple calls and getting, that man's phone, I bet, just never stops ringing. It just kind of rings and rings and rings, probably 24 hours a day. But, he says, he doesn't, he's not griping about it. He doesn't, he says he wants to answer our prayers. But he also asks for us to, he says, I want to answer your prayers. I don't want to miss a single phone call. But if you would pray for the use of my subconscious mind, I will answer your calls before you ask. I promise that I will. And this is one of the things that is going to be given to him. And it's going to have to be given to him in order for him to continue in this work and to go forth and do the things that Yahweh is requiring of him to do. And then we see here in verse 10, or verse 106 here, it says, verse 10, and the devil who deceived them. I can't believe, Pastor says, that a person can believe that the first day of the week is the seventh day of the week, or the seventh day of the week is the first day of the week. I can't believe this. I can't believe that this can altogether be true deception. I think it must have been desirable or looked desirable. It's kind of like December 25th, the pagan holiday that they celebrate. And we've got to remember that Satan made sin appear desirable. Men, you have to make a fish hook appear desirable to the fish in order to catch the fish. You've got to disguise it with something. You've got to disguise the danger with something, so that fish will take the bait. Well, this is what Satan has done. She makes these things appear desirable, so mankind will fall for these things. And Genesis 3:6 shows that. That when the woman saw that the tree was desirable for food, when that was pleasant to the eyes, that it was desirable to make one wise. You see this word desire, how that word desire is in there, that constant word desire, desirable. It appealed to the mind. And it's the same thing that the holidays of the world do. The holidays appeal to mankind's emotions. Okay? Satan plays on emotions. That's what drove the ancient religions, the Babylon mystery religions. That's what drove, and that's what the key behind the ancient mystery religions were. They were driven by emotion, and they captured the emotion. That's what they did. That was why they were so popular, was because they captured the emotion. And emotions are that can be manipulated so easily. And this is exactly what Satan does here. Satan plays on the emotions of the people. In Proverbs 15:21 there shows, folly seems delightful to him who is destitute of wisdom. Remember what Yahweh says. Yahweh says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And that the reverence of Yahweh, remember what the reverence of Yahweh is, the beginning of wisdom. So we have to understand where the wisdom comes from. Wisdom comes from the reverence of Yahweh, from reading and studying these laws and studying the books of Yisrayl and studying the scriptures. This is where the wisdom comes from. Okay? But these things are made to appear desirable. Now, this word desirable means worth having. It appears to be worth having or wanting, pleasing, excellent, or fine. And it also means arousing desire or longing. And that's what this desirable means. The mind thinks it's worth having or it's worth wanting. It plays on that emotion. It's arousing desire or that longing. See, it plays on that emotion. It lifts up those emotions. That word desire means to long for. It means to crave or to want. The synonym of desire is what? Covet. What was one of the 10 Commandments? We shall not covet. We shall not lust. It's the same thing. So this is what we have to guard against. We have to guard ourselves against those things. That's what these holidays play on. That's what the religions play on. Pastor shows here, he says, I can't believe with all the suicides around that time period that someone wouldn't get this in their head that something is wrong with these damnable days that we see the people celebrating. If they're so righteous and so right, then why do so many people kill themselves over these holidays? It doesn't make any sense. But people don't make that connection. He shows here, he said, why would anyone want to be deceived into this? I cannot believe it's full deception. I believe it is a deception that is desired, or it would not be taking place. And kind of in a nutshell, what Pastor's saying is that people desire deception because sin looks like a desirable thing. Jeremiah 10 strictly condemns everything that is done here during that pagan season. And you can look it up. You can look it up in an encyclopedia. There's many different sources out there. Pastor even shows here that the news, they will even put it on the news of where these days come from. Oh, this has nothing to do with the birth of the Messiah. This actually goes back to the Roman Saturnalia in honor of this God here, and this is what was done, and they'll give the whole history. But yet people continue to flock to it, and they continue to do that. Why? They even bring out the truth on the news about Easter. And they bring this out in the newspapers and then show that the entire world today is turning to it. How could you be deceived? Deception, this is a vocabulary word, deception. Deception is where you do not fully know about a thing. That is a vocabulary word. Deception is where you do not know fully about a thing. But with this, Pastor shows, it's like something that was presented to Eve that it was desirable. They took it thinking, yeah, I can go ahead and partake of it this way, like fornication or adultery, and I can be forgiven for it later. Pastor says, they do it with deliberateness in their minds, and that he says they do it with deliberateness in their minds. That's what they do. And we can't do that here. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, 10 through 12. shows, and with all deceivableness of sin in those who are perishing because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. With all deceivableness of sin, they did not receive the love of the truth. In other words, they didn't accept it. They turned to it. They had the opportunity to take it, to run with it. They had the opportunity to turn to it, but they chose a different way. And for this reason, it says Yahweh will send them strong delusion. This is part of the judgments. This is part of the judgment of Yahweh. And that they would believe the deception. If they don't want to believe the truth, then they're going to believe the deception. And it's going to take hold of them. That they would believe the deception in order that all those will be judged as not having believed the truth, but as having delighted in sin. And, that's, that's what we have set before us. Yahweh is not going to force us to choose righteousness. Satan can't force us to choose evil, but boy, she can sure make it appear desirable. And it's up to us, men, to choose which way it is that we want to go. Then Yahweh says if you do it deliberately, if you go back to the book here, it says, if you do it deliberately, then there remains no more sacrifice for sin. That's rebellion. That's out and out rebellion. So this puts you in a spot where it's very difficult to get out of. Remember what Hebrews 10:26 through 27 says. That if they sin willfully after they come to the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more sacrifice for sin. But a certain fearful expectation, of what's going to come about, come upon the adversary and those who follow her. Your best bet is to use prevention, as the scientists say and as your Bible says. At Revelation, back to the book here, it says, Revelation chapter 20, verse 10. It says, this was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet had been cast, and will be tormented a day and a night because of the ages. And I saw a great white throne judgment, and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and heaven fled. That is, they were driven away, as shown in Revelation 12:7 through 8. And there was found no place for them, and I saw the dead, small and great, standing before Yahweh. Highlight this next part. And the books were opened. The books that are written about you right now, your judgment, the record being kept of you. Okay, so the judgment, this books, and the books were open. The books that are written about you right now, your judgment, the record being kept of you. Okay, if you want to cross-reference this, Malachi chapter 3, 16 to 17. Then those who reverenced Yahweh spoke often to one another, and Yahweh paid attention and heard them. And a book of remembrance was written in his presence of those who gave reverence to Yahweh and who thought upon, considered, and regarded his name. Now remember what all that means. When you think about, you consider and you regard the name, you bring honor upon Yahweh. And it means more than, it means being totally obedient to him. And notice here it says, and they will be mine, says Yahweh of hosts. And that day when I make up my jewels, I will spare them as a man spares his own son who serves him. Okay, so you can see here of the judgment and stuff that comes from the books that are written. It says that record, if we go back to the book now, that record, by the way, is being kept of you on the Sabbath day too. The work that is being done, there are certain works that are being done continually, as Yahshua said. The works that must be done, and that's part of it. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. Remember, Yahshua said our names are written in that book, in the book of life, in the Lamb's book of life. Okay, and if you want to put a cross-reference there on that one, Revelation 21:27. Okay, because we are under his control, he is the firstborn. He has made it now to be the high priest, and will soon see him to be crowned as King of kings and ruler of rulers. But under Yahweh, under Yahweh the head, the supreme head. Okay? And a couple of other cross-references here. Revelation 9:16. 1 Corinthians 15:27 to 28. Okay, and if we go back to the book here, bottom of page 167, left-hand column. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books and according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it. Everybody was raised from the dead. This is at the end of the 1,000-year period, at the end of that millennial reign. This is the second resurrection, when everybody who has ever lived is going to be resurrected. Those that didn't have the opportunity to know Yahweh during the first resurrection, that weren't called, they're going to have their calling. So all of those people out in the world right now who have never had the opportunity to come to Yahweh's house are going to be given the opportunity after this great tribulation, after the millennial reign. But they're going to have to overcome just as we did. They're going to have to overcome just as we are. But the difference is they're going to have history. They're going to have 6,000 years of man's history versus 1,000 years of Yahweh's history. And they will have that to be able to choose which way they want to go. And that, men, is when Satan is loosed for a little season to go out and deceive the nations again. Okay? And they were judged, every man according as his work, and death and Sheol were cast into the lake of fire. It will take a while after that, Yahweh shows, that this will cease after a while. This is the second death, and whoever was not written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. And then he covers, then Pastor, he goes in and he covers a little bit about the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, how that is actually going forth, and it's actually changing the hearts and minds of the people who are taking this program. And it is taking Yahweh's character. It's taking Yahweh's character to mankind, but they just don't realize that's what it is. One day soon they'll realize what it is. They just don't understand. They don't realize what it is right now. This next section we're going to look at here, it shows how Satan hates righteousness. Now, Yahweh tells us about sin here in chapter 17. He shows the Catholic Church and her daughters. He calls them whores, which they are. They are pushing lust, whoredom, and idolatry, and harlotry. And how are they doing that? Through entertainment, through their teachings, through their churches, through everything, through advertising, clothing, all of this. Everybody who is following this is being pushed in this manner. You don't even have to go to church. All you have to do is own a television, and then you'll see this harlotry being pushed right there. Highlight this next part, man. Highlight this next part right here. Revelation 18:3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The reason he calls it the wine of her wrath is because she hates what she sees being brought forth in the house of Yahweh. Okay? So highlight that. Satan hates what she sees being brought forth by this work. She hates what she saw that was brought forth by Abel. She hates what she saw that was being brought forth by the prophets. She hates what she saw that was brought forth by Yahshua Messiah. And she really hates what she sees as being brought forth by this work, because this work is going to usher in the kingdom of Yahweh. Okay? She hated it when she saw it at Abel, when she saw Adam and Eve leaning toward this way. She hated it. She came in to deceive. She hates the house of Yahweh in these last days. Okay? And if you want to cross-reference Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 through 5, and then again verse 13 and 15. She would like nothing better than to see the house of Yahweh destroyed in this great nuclear holocaust that's going to take place. But the house of Yahweh is not going to be destroyed. Matthew 16:18 shows that this house is not going to be allowed to be put in the grave. This work is going to usher in the kingdom of Yahweh. Yahweh shows he is going to protect it, mainly because of his work, because you have proved yourself to Yahweh, you have proved and that you will not deny his name, and that you will keep his laws. And I would say 99.9% of the people that are in the house of Yahweh right now are that way. He says, if you're not, go to your counselors, repent, and continue to push forth. He says, you need to get ready. We only have a few months left to get ready. Look how, it's just amazing how on point this is, from written all the way back then to now. It's amazing. Notice this wrath of Satan. She is angry with Yahweh because she sees this power that she once had. She had the power to create and to maintain flesh at one time, but that was taken from her. Genesis 3:14 shows that her ability to bring forth life from the dust, that was taken from her. Highlight this. For some reason, she got it in her head and became jealous of mankind because she thought she was not going to have this great authority that she once had. So she became jealous of her own sons, They were her own children who she was supposed to teach righteousness, but she didn't teach them. And Yahweh said, because of this jealousy, because of what you are teaching here, you are causing these people to commit suicide and go the way of death. This is what she was bringing forth, bringing them. She was bringing them her wrath. Okay, that's what she was bringing them. And again, she would like very much to see how this nuclear holocaust would actually wipe out the whole house of Yahweh, and that's what it's been designed to do. And we know where these things start. These things start with the lust. It enters in and it starts to change and it damages the mind. It damages the computer that's running the whole body here. This is the reason Yahweh doesn't want you to yield to it. Fornication is a sin against the body, and it destroys. It actually destroys the mind, and this is what Satan is trying to do. She is actually just trying to destroy the mind through fornication, through adultery, and even through the keeping of these pagan holidays, because keeping these pagan holidays is damaging to the mind too, because it puts a lot of stress. It puts a multitude of stress, much stress on mankind, and it's another way that she seeks to mentally wear out the saints. Men, I went over just a little bit. We will leave off here on page 168.